Okay, Jackie, you have one of the most unique stories I have ever heard for a vegan. You were a dairy farmer, and now you are a full-fledged vegan. You're an activist, you're an advocate, you're married to a vegan. I mean, the vegan doesn't stop. So how did that all happen?
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
Oh, wow. Now, this is the embarrassing part because, everyone always wants to know when they talk to me, what happened? What was that, defining moment that got you to quit dairy farming and become vegan? And I wish it had been like that, but it was actually nothing to do with dairy farming, which is really embarrassing. It was actually a pig and a Facebook post that got me to go vegan. So I'd actually been out of the industry a few years and I went vegan independently, really. I'd been vegetarian my whole time that I'd been dairy farming. And I'd always been veg curious and then, thought veganism sounded something that might appeal to me, but I thought it was one of those, it was a diet. I thought it was a diet. And as a diet, it was extreme because, we only sort of eat lettuce and goji berries and that kind of thing. If you're vegan, you don't eat properly. And I had no idea that it was an actual way of life, a whole philosophy, a way of being. And so I kind of, swept it under the carpet, but I'd always been a little curious. And, it was a friend of mine who had been vegan for 25 years, and she was a Facebook friend of mine, and she was always posting things that I didn't really want to see about bad things that happened to animals and trying to raise awareness. And she was retired. She was in her 60s, 70s, I think. And I always used to think, you're a lovely person and I really like you as a friend, but I don't want to see all this stuff. So I'd be scrolling, because sometimes her post would be the first thing I'd see in the morning. And I'd be like, I don't want to see that. It ruins my day. But one day she asked for her Facebook friends to sign a petition banning farrowing crates for mother pigs here in New Zealand. So I thought, right, well, this is something I can do to help my lovely friend. I will click on this petition. I will be a good person. I will be a caring citizen, and I will click on this petition. And when I clicked on it and saw what was happening to mother pigs here in New Zealand, stuck in farrowing crates, I couldn't believe it. I thought this was something that happened in other underdeveloped countries, not New Zealand, So I was really shocked, and it just hit me like a bullet. It was in that moment that I just thought, I didn't know this was happening. I never want to be a part of any animal exploitation again. So I have a lot to thank you for now. So for anyone who thinks that Facebook posts don't work and you think you're in an echo chamber and nobody reads your stuff, we may not necessarily like posts, but it doesn't mean that they don't go in and they don't make a difference. So that was what happened to me. It wasn't until about 3 months after I went vegan that I made the connection finally between what I'd once been a part of.
Well, and it's pretty amazing how it can take a while for us to make the connection, because when I actually started as a plant-based eater. I would not call myself vegan because I thought vegans were crazy. And now everything I do is about veganism, my business, personal life, everything. And it was about 6 months into it, I actually was at the grocery store walking by the meat department to go to another department. And I literally stopped in my tracks and I could feel the pain and suffering. I was crying and I was like, how could I have been so blind? Here I was rescuing animals on the one hand and petting the dog on the one hand and eating my, whatever it may be, meat product on the other hand. And it was one of those moments where you just go, how could I have not known? And even with as much information that's out there, a lot of people still don't know, or they think that we exaggerate. And now you have an organization, Vegan FTA, which is Vegan for the Animals, that has a worldwide following at this point in time of 1.5 million people. When did you start that organization and how did you grow it to be one that has millions of people following you?
Oh, wow. Well, it's got a kind of an interesting background story. So I'm kind of like a co-founder. So we have a founder. She insists that I'm a co-founder as well, but our founder is Sarah, and she's American. She is currently living in Spain, and Vegan FTA started. She has been a passionate animal rights activist for many years, but she became ill with a chronic condition several years ago, and I think it was back in 2017, and she was devastated because she felt that all her years of being on the frontline activism, all of a sudden she couldn't do anything to help the animals anymore. And so her partner, Mikey, he is a computer programmer, and he sort of said, well, look, you know, you might not be able to get out there yourself anymore, but, you know, you can go out there to help other people and share, you know, I'll make you a website, and you can start a Facebook page, and let's share the good work that other people are doing instead and amplify their voices, you know. And so that's what she started doing. And so this was back in 2017. And I actually came across her. It was a little tiny advertisement on Facebook. Facebook keeps changing my life, and the Facebook ad had a pig. It was this tiny little pig that said that they were looking for volunteer writers. And so that was how I joined Vegan FTA as a volunteer, because it really helped me to find my voice. When I first came out as a former dairy farmer into the vegan community here in New Zealand, I was expected to, you know, I thought they were going to kick me out of Facebook groups, or I'd be really vilified. And, you know, it was quite the opposite. Instead, they sort of said, you know, you've got to use your voice. You've got this unique perspective. You need to share your truth. And so I thought, oh, okay. And so I started doing that, and I got connected with a organization over here called SAFE in New Zealand. And they asked me to record a video about what it was like for me back in the day, helping to separate the mother cows from the calves and taking the calves away. And so I recorded a video about this, and I was terrified because, you know, I know what farmers are like. I know what the farming community was like. I still know a lot of farmers. And so I got them to, you know, please, can you black out my face? Can you distort my voice? And even through all this, when the video came out, I still got a lot of graphic sort of threats against me, death threats and that kind of thing. So that really freaked me out. And my husband, Gareth, and I, we were actually living on the road at the time in a camper van traveling around. And I was a writer, a travel writer, and I was really frightened. I said, that is it. That is my foray into activism. You know, people are going to come after me. And he's like, Jackie, you're in a van. Nobody can find us. You're completely mobile. But I was convinced, you know, that really scared me away for a little while. So when I found this advertisement for Vegan FTA, I'd actually developed my own chronic health problems, and I've been bedridden for 7 months at that stage. And I saw this advertisement wanting volunteer writers, and so I got in touch with Sarah and said, well, I realized it was a way that I could advocate secretly and keep sharing my truth about the dairy industry without anybody knowing who I was. And so I got into it that way, and I sort of got in touch with Sarah and said, well, you know, I could share an article about this. I could write an article about that. And she said, do it. And so at this stage, when I came on board, that was 2018. And Sarah had already amassed 140,000 followers then by herself, which was pretty neat. And that was another big draw card for me, because I realized that, you know, I could do my secret writing from my van, from my bed, even as I was, and it could still get it out there to a big voice. And so it was after that, you know, I was just writing content for the organization. It was just Sarah, Mikey, and myself at that stage. And then my husband, Gareth, came on board as a filmmaker, at the end of 2019, I think. And it just went from there. We just kept growing. I don't know what it is. Sarah's a genius. She just knows what content resonates with people. And yeah, I just talk as much as I can now about my experience in the dairy industry. I think the big clincher for me was seeing people like Earthling Ed, who, you know, he never backs down. He always speaks the truth. And for me, I was thinking, well, look at everything that you're sharing, and you never let what anybody says against you,
right,
you know, stop you from speaking that truth. And I was sort of thinking, well, he didn't have 18 years in the dairy industry as I did, and yet right, he is still out there doing it. So what's my excuse, you know, for not doing it? So just went from there.
And I love it, because now you're really out there sharing the message. And, you know, and I think about any kind of a cause that we really believe in and that we get behind, there comes a point where we just say, I can't hide out anymore. And I look at what's going on around the world, and especially in Iran right now, with a lot of the women, that they know they're going to die for a cause. They already know that. And, you know, a lot of times people, they pussyfoot around an issue, but with the animals, we can't pussyfoot around that, because there's a lot of death and destruction that's going on. Now, I know your husband, Gareth, he wasn't vegan when you two first met, was he?
No.
Yeah. There's kind of an interesting story there. But before you share that, I want to remind people you're listening to the Vegan Visibility podcast show, and I'd love for you to leave a rating and a review wherever you may be watching this or listening to it. I'm Kathleen Gage. I'm your host, and I'm talking with Jackie Norman of Vegan FTA, which is for the animals. So tell us about the evolution that your husband went through, and now he's kind of gone to the other end of the spectrum, where he's a really outspoken advocate, which is wonderful.
He certainly is. Oh goodness. Well, like I said, when we went vegan, we were living on the road at the time, in a van. We were actually helping on a working sheep farm in rural Southland in New Zealand when we went vegan. And it was something that I just, like I said, felt called to do. And I said to Gareth after I saw this post about the pig, I said, right, I'm going to go vegan. Literally like that. And he said, okay. He said, that's fine. You do what you want to do, my dear. That's fine. I'll humor you. I'll support you. But, there's no way I'm doing that. So here I was in this little van, and our kitchen was a whole 1.6 meters wide. And we had no real facilities apart from a little, 2-burner camping stove and the real basics. And so I thought, right, well, if I'm going vegan, I don't want this to be any inconvenience. I think at that stage, even with the pig, I still felt that it was more of a diet kind of thing. And so I started off making different meals. So I would, make my own, very nervously. I think the first thing I ever made was like a lentil bolognese, which was really good. And then the next day I made like a Singapore noodle, all this wonderful creation. And Gareth was still having his like 500 grams of cheese. You could stand a spoon up in his pasta bakes. It was insane. And he was a big fella. He was big, like, you would not believe to look at him now, but he was pushing 120 kilos. He was a big guy.
What is that in pounds? Because we do pounds in the US, and I don't know what the conversion would be.
Question. I think it's almost double. I think it's around double. So
okay. So he was a big boy. Yeah.
He was a big lad.
I've seen the before and after. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. And he looked like the wild man of Borneo, because there we were traveling around the country, and he had all this masses of hair and everything. But he would start looking at my food and realize that mine was lovely and colorful, and and I was really enjoying mine. It looked really different, whereas we've just been having, what it's like. Maybe you found the same. I'm sure a lot of people do before you went vegan, that you kind of had the same 6 or 8 recipes in your repertoire and you just rotate them. And we were like that. And all of a sudden I was kind of like, right, well, what do vegans eat? I better have a look. And so I was, going online and just making something different every night. So Gareth kind of got quite lured over by my food. And then, like I said, we were in a van, and the whole van was 4.6 meters long. And so I was... I wanted to learn more about being vegan, because we knew no other vegans at all. I certainly didn't. I've never met a real life one, sort of thing. And here we were on a sheep station in rural Southland, where the most exotic thing that you could get was tofu that was vegan. So I thought, right, I need to learn a bit more about this. And so I started voraciously watching, What the Health, Forks Over Knives, and that kind of thing. And I was at one end of the van on my laptop, and Gareth was at his end of the van. We had our little respective zones, our own spaces. And I think he was playing a computer game or something at the time, but he had one earphone out so that he could listen to me and, wasn't ignoring me while he was playing his game. And I was watching What the Health, I think, and his grandfather had just been diagnosed with dementia. And they were talking on What the Health about the link between dairy and dementia. And it really got Gareth thinking about, what his grandfather had grown up eating. It was cheese with everything. It was rich food, it was very, very dairy heavy as well. And so that just struck a chord with him. And he just thought, well, if there is any way that I can stop that. I mean, the whole family were devastated. He's unfortunately passed away since, but the family was so devastated that he'd fallen ill, that granddad had fallen ill. And so he was like, well, if there is any way that I can stop that happening to me through my diet, through what I eat, then I'm all for that. And so he said to me, well, I want to eat the same way as you, and to be honest, I really didn't think that he was going to stick to it more than probably 6 weeks. I really thought that it was going to be a flash in the pan kind of thing, because he was the most, the last person to look at him, especially at that stage, that you would have thought would go vegan, and I think he he had a lot of flack from other males, sort of saying, oh, suddenly his, masculinity would all be gone kind of thing. But I found it quite the opposite. And I think
I was going to say, they've done studies on that, and it's like quite the opposite, which is kind of interesting, because as you watch men get older and they get the big belly from dairy and beef and all that, and you're thinking, I know something about you that you don't want people to know, but I know it's true, and then you see somebody who's a plant-based eater and they're in great shape, and that they are a little more virile than they used to be, which is
absolutely.
For some men, that's what it takes for them to say, okay, I'll give up meat and dairy. It's amazing what is attached to the different brains that men have, but that's not what this show is about. What I'd like to know is, like, when did the two of you suddenly become so visible within the vegan movement? Because when you're in your travel trailer traveling around and you're kind of just doing your thing, the two of you, and he decides to go vegan, and now he is very outspoken as a vegan. When did he cross that invisible line?
That is a really good question. I think it was a gradual involvement. I think that's right. He probably may have a different answer, but I know for him, there are, he has a lot of people that he admires, and I think the real clincher for us coming out of the the vegan closet, as it were, was when it was in 2020, so we've been on the road for coming up 5 years, and then the pandemic hit, and we could see at that stage I was writing articles about the dairy industry or whatever else I felt like writing about. And Gareth was also volunteering, and we were going around animal sanctuaries around New Zealand. And so, he would make video content about whatever he wanted to, really, but it was mainly going around animal sanctuaries and filming rescue animals. So I think that was a real clincher for him. He loves pigs, absolutely loves pigs. So I think that was a real clincher as well, spending so much time with pigs and that kind of thing. But really in 2020, all of a sudden we had to stop because nobody wanted a couple of Europeans in a van. All of a sudden we were the germ plague bearers of doom. Right. It didn't matter that I'd been in New Zealand 30 years. All of a sudden it was like, oh, this couple are in a van. They've got foreign accents. Nobody wanted the likes of us around, as it were. And so we were fortunate in one of our readers that was following our travels at the time gave us a beautiful home to spend lockdown in. And that was wonderful. And it was in that time that we realized a lot of people in the vegan community were really struggling because with the lockdowns, they couldn't go out anymore. They lost their support network. They lost their social network. They felt like they couldn't do anything for the animals anymore. And they were feeling really useless and helpless. And, it was a tough time in many ways. But for animal rights activists at that stage as well, you had that added feeling of feeling useless. And so for us, we weren't phased at all because I'd been used to having to do activism for a van. I'd never been, and Sarah as well, we were no longer able to do protests. We weren't able to do vigils. We weren't able to do all of those in-person things that a lot of people sort of relied on for their activism. And so we thought, well, it's no biggie, we're no less active for the animals because we can't leave the house. And so that was when our focus at Vegan FTA really changed as well. And, like a lot of people started going to online summits and things like that. And it was actually a summit called the Climate Diet Summit, which the wonderful Serena Farb was co-hosting. And that was where we met a lot of mentors. It was a wonderful weekend of listening to, speakers. And we realized, look how much, of a voice you can still have over lockdown. Look how many people you can still reach. Look how much you can still learn. And so that was really what gave us the information, or the inspiration, should I say, for Gareth and I to actually start putting ourselves out there and teaching people about, there are countless different ways to be active. It doesn't matter that you can't leave the house. You can still sow seeds. You can still be productive. And so, it just went from there, really.
Well, and I do want to talk about the different ways that people can be activists. And before we do, how can people reach you? What's the easiest way for people to find you, whether it be your website or one of your favorite social handles?
Yeah, I guess our biggest platform is Facebook. We've got over 1 million just on Facebook alone following. Otherwise, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, but I think, Instagram and Facebook are our biggest. And we also have a lot of content on YouTube. So it's a great place to go and check out.
What about a website? Do you have a website they can go to?
Yes. We do. veganfta.com. And that's where you'll find a lot of news. We're busy upgrading it and revamping it at the moment. So it's just going to keep getting better. And you'll see where we have all our pledges and campaigns on that you can support as well.
Fantastic. Well, I do want to talk about activism, but I also want to take a little side tour here on your health. You mentioned that you were bedridden for a while, and you actually have gone through many transformations since becoming vegan. And I've never seen you with this much energy. You're just like on fire and you are feeling great. And it wasn't necessarily so that long ago that you weren't feeling that good. So tell us about that and how changing your vegan diet protocol helped.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, I was bedridden with a lot of things. I had a lot of women's problems. I had endometriosis really severely. I had adenomyosis. A lot of people haven't heard of that, but I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's quite closely related to endo. So I had that. That was bad. I needed to have major surgery for that. And just, yeah, I had a lot of problems with things like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Those are the main ones. And, I just never felt quite right. I had a lot of chronic pain, and the doctors just sort of said, well, it's chronic pelvic pain. There's nothing we can actually do about it. Even when I had the surgery, and I said, yes, give me the surgery. And they said, well, you realize, this may not get rid of your chronic pelvic pain. And I said, of course it will. There's not going to be much left. If if you're taking everything out, there's not going to be much left. They said, well, we're warning you. And of course, 2 weeks later, the pain returned, and I was just devastated. That wasn't cool at all. And so what happened was we met a lady, funny enough, she was a fellow nomad on the road, and she was a whole food plant-based nutrition coach. And so even though we'd never met her before, she said, come for dinner. I'm house sitting at the moment. Come for dinner. I'll make you a whole food plant-based meal. I'll show you how to cook without oil and all of that kind of stuff. And so Gareth and I thought, okay, what is this going to be like? Cooking without oil? I mean, we still had a lot of oil, and we weren't junk food vegans because we'd always had to cook from scratch because there was really, living on the road, we always had to get what food we could, and we just didn't really have a huge amount of convenience food or anything, but we still had, everything had a lot of oil in it, and everything was, fried. And yeah, so we went for dinner with Stephanie, her name was, and she made us this wonderful meal with no oil at all. And it just so happened that the Game Changers was coming out the following week. And so she said, come to the theater. We'll go to the premiere of Game Changers. So that was September 2019, I believe. Is that right? I think that's right. And so we went there, and that was really, well, it was a game changer. We learned, we got really inspired by people and learning about all the benefits for whole food plant-based vegan as compared to simply vegan as we were. And so, that gave us the confidence to start cooking without oil and all of that, to just the pure power of plants. And Gareth lost 40 kilos, something like that. So 80 pounds.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I lost a little. I didn't have that much to lose, but and it was so wonderful to see, because I'd been really worried about him. Although he'd lost a little weight being vegan, we still he had a lot of processed food still in, a lot of refined sugars and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it just fell off him. I think he lost 40 kilos in 4 months. So it was a big weight loss. And he just looked different, felt completely different. Yeah, just felt fantastic. And so that was an accidental benefit. I mean, he was someone that I was worried, about being diabetic. I really felt that previously he was heading that way. And obviously, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It's like, I love you, but I'm really worried about you.
Right.
So it was so wonderful that, just him following the way that I was eating, because that was the thing, Stephanie said, I'm pretty sure I can help your pain. And I said, what, with food? And I was pretty skeptical. She said, I'm sure. She said, I have helped people. She said, but I'm sure I can help your pain. And so, yeah, she helped us with recipes and things like that. And we gradually got more and more confident. And here we are.
It's incredible, because actually I spoke with a young woman the other day who her whole focus is endometriosis, reversing it through a plant-based diet. And I actually was diagnosed at the age of 21. It was 1975. I was one of the first people the first women that they actually had a name to what was happening, because at that time, that was about, 40 some odd years ago. And they didn't know what it was. And I really thought I was going crazy, because here my stomach was bloated out. I didn't know that I was just infested with tumors and cysts. And at that time, they didn't do the kind of sonograms or whatever they do to see what's going on in somebody's body. And finally, this one doctor, after about 6 months, this one doctor had just been to a conference, and they found out that there was this really rampant disease in women, and he could find out through a laparoscopy. And so we're going back many, many years where now we have more information. But the interesting thing about endometriosis and a lot of diseases that we have, it's directly related to what we eat. And I love what you said about you can be vegan and not be healthy, because a lot of people do say the vegan diet. And, we've all probably done that. And veganism is a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's about the animals, and the health benefits come from the choices of vegan foods that we choose, which is a whole food, plant-based diet. Now, when somebody comes to you and they say, well, I want to be an activist, what can I do? A lot of people think it has to be going out to the sanctuaries or the vigils. And you shared that you were a writer. I do it through my podcast shows. I do it through my business. I work with vegan businesses. So I actually went through a period where I thought I had to do activism the same way other people were. So what are some of the different ways that people could be an activist and it would fit within their lane?
Absolutely. I mean, there are countless ways, and that's the great thing. It's like everybody can be an activist. And, I used to think that an activist was someone that, chained themselves to buildings. You had to do that kind of thing to be an activist, But activism it could be where you put your dollar for starters. It can be about supporting, vegan, obviously supporting vegan businesses, supporting vegan restaurants, just making ethical choices as much as you can whenever you go out, just because it really matters. And particularly like small businesses as well. We live in Wellington region here in New Zealand, and, there are some fantastic vegan businesses, but they are small family-run businesses, and they really, really need support. And so, you're helping them. And I mean, the demand is out there. We know that the demand is out there. It's right. It's growing insane, but there are so many things. I mean, like my friend who was the one that got me to go vegan in the end. Some people, if all you can do, or if all you feel comfortable doing is putting a post on your social media every day, just enlightening people about something that's happening to animals, that is a wonderful form of activism in itself, because it's important. And like I said, when I saw the post about the pig, I'm not going to like it. People get so frustrated, that they don't get this huge response to their Facebook post about the terrible things that are happening to animals. Isn't it going to look a bit weird if people like it? They're not going to love something terrible that's happening, is it?
Absolutely.
It doesn't. So that would be really weird. And I think because, we don't get this massive reaction, that people think that others aren't listening, but that's not the case at all. So that's something that people do. Another friend of ours, she donates to vegan businesses or vegan organizations each month. Another friend of mine, she has a job where she would rather not be working because it's not as ethical as she would like. It's not aligned with her ethically, but she earns really good money. So she, puts as much as that money as she can into supporting vegan businesses, vegan initiatives. And so there are always, there's business activism, there's hospitality activism. There's countless forms of activism. Gareth, one of the things that he loves to do, and I don't know if this is allowed everywhere, but he takes a bag of chalk everywhere he goes. So, because there may be opportunities for chalking. There's a walk that we go on sometimes, and stickering is another thing as well. We had some great stickers when Seaspiracy came out, and we were living at the beach at that stage with a lot of fishermen, and that was one of our favorite things to go and do, was just go along early in the morning and just place some some stickers around saying eating fish is killing our planet, watch Seaspiracy. Gareth's one of his favorite one at the moment is I don't know if you've heard the documentary Milked, which is a New Zealand documentary.
I actually watched it. Very well done.
Oh, it's a great film. It's a great film, and it's really important. And so, and over here in New Zealand, it's getting worldwide acclaim and awards. And over here in New Zealand, our media don't want to touch it, because it's too confronting. But Gareth is out there with his chalk saying, "Watch Milked on YouTube."
Good for him. Good for him. Well, and what's amazing about being an activist, there are many different ways to do it, and the media does block us. Healthcare in our country, in the United States, healthcare has a vested interest in advertising on TV. They're in bed with Big Pharma. They're in bed with the media. I mean, it's the politicians. It's really, it's obscene how prevalent it is. And a lot of times, we can want to say something and it gets blocked by whether it be a social media or the media. And so what we need to do is just stay the course, stay the path. And you're right about support vegan restaurants, support vegan businesses. I actually was talking with somebody recently who wanted to sell me their services. And I said, well, quite seriously, I said, one, I do what you're trying to sell me. And two, I usually only work with vegan businesses. And they said, well, don't you think that's limiting yourself? And it's like, no, I really don't, because I help vegan businesses raise their visibility so they can go out and do what they do. And it's just something that we have to decide for ourselves what our activism is going to be. I had a situation at the grocery store yesterday where once I shifted to be vegan for the animals, a lot changed, because now I don't cheat at all, and I never really did, but it's easier if we say we're on a vegan diet to say, oh, just today it won't matter. But if we say it's for the animals, and there was this, I was in the bulk section, and there were some honey covered peanuts or something, and it looked really appealing. And I used to be a sugar addict, and I read the ingredients and it said contains milk. And I thought, would that one time hurt? And I thought, yeah, it would. It would hurt that one animal that had to sacrifice for me to have that one bite. And so I just walked away. And, we can have these little temptations, but if we're really aligned with our big why, it makes a huge difference. So, in closing, what are your final thoughts for people that they want to live a vegan life? They want to live an aligned life. They want to help the animals. What are your final thoughts for people?
Oh, good question. I think, like you say, finding your why is very important. For me, I actually brought my why with me. This is my why here. I don't know. Can you see that?
Yes.
This is Suki. So Suki was my calf when I first arrived in New Zealand, and I didn't realize that cows and calves got separated, and that the calves were taken away and slaughtered at 4 days old, and all kinds of other horrific things. And even though I was working in the industry for 18 years and still didn't make that connection, Suki was a little calf that I saved from being killed by blunt force trauma. And she was too small. She was even too small to go to the slaughterhouse, so the farmer wouldn't waste money on milk to feed her, so that she weighed enough to go on the slaughter truck. So Suki became my best friend, and she was, she was wonderful. She is very, when people call cows grass puppies, they really, really are. She used to hang out with me and the dogs as well. And so, that is my why. I think for people, for learning, that is the thing. I never used to know all this. I mean, you can imagine, like I said at the start, people always think that I suddenly made this, there was this definitive point when I was milking cows to suddenly be like, oh no, that's not okay, and completely changed my way of life. And I wish that had been the case, and that was the thing, but I didn't realize. And so that was, I think it's a good bonus, I guess, to my advocacy, in that I was milking cows for 18 years. I was helping to take calves away from their mothers. And the whole time I was vegetarian, because I'm like, meat equals death. Don't want to kill any animals. Right. But because I was singing away as I was milking the cows, I didn't realize, I didn't make the connection that, milking the cows hurt them, not just them, but their babies. Right. And it was just every bit as bad as the meat industry. And so I can't be angry at the average consumer for being blind and not knowing things, when I was right there for almost 2 decades. And so it's a question of learning, once I learned what I've been a part of, but I only learned that, once I really started to explore into veganism. And I think that's the thing. It's the same with Gareth, once he actually got to visit the sanctuaries and he made the connections with the animals and thought that he used to eat them. I think it's finding your why. Just learn as much as you can. There is so much information out there. I actually, there is a film that I watched recently called Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story. Now, we are neighbors to Australia. And, I thought kangaroos, they're on rugby jerseys, they're on planes, they're, Australia's beloved national icon, but they're being hunted to extinction and they're being killed in the most horrendous ways. And that really affected me really badly. And so, there is so much to learn about. The animal exploitation is everywhere. But also with Gareth, if his granddad hadn't had dementia, perhaps he wouldn't have gone vegan as well. He might have just been happy eating my food,
Right. Well, you made two really good points there. And one is that even though you were milking cows, you didn't make the connection, and that we have to go easy on ourselves. We don't know what we don't know, but once we know, then we can make a better choice in life. And a lot of people really don't know, even, we're immersed in it. We're around veganism all the time because that's what we do. But the average consumer, I've had conversations at the grocery store where I will engage people if they say, wow, you have so much energy, and they look at my cart and they see a lot of fruits and vegetables and beans and legumes and all that. And so that's my opportunity to have a discussion. And a lot of them do not know what happens to the meat that they have in their cart. So it's about taking the opportunity to educate. And another big thing I think that many of us have had to go through is to forgive ourselves for what we didn't know. I used to wear leather. I rode a motorcycle. I wore leathers. And I mean, I was very into that. And I had, chaps, I had leather jackets, and it was like, oh my gosh, how could I have done that? And I did it because I didn't know, but once we know, we can do better. So Jackie, this has been delightful. I encourage people to go visit your website at veganfta, veganfortheanimals.com or .org.
.com, yeah.
.com. Okay. And I just so appreciate what you're doing. Give my love to your sweet husband. He is such an amazing man. And I really appreciate what both of you are doing to raise the vibration, raise the awareness, and to make a change in the world. This is Kathleen Gage with the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, wishing you a lot of health, a lot of compassion, and a lot of good eating and healthy living. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.